Hey guys, it's Sarah. So I want to review slash discuss the latest book I read, which you probably all have read, slash heard of, slash know about it, and probably don't care about it, but I wanted to give my 2 cents into this book world on YouTube. And the book is Divergent by Veronica Roth. And I'm sure you've all heard about it, you know what it's about, you've probably read it and reviewed it yourself, but I thought I'd just give my little points of view about it because, yeah, I just want to do it, so why not do it? It's the last book I read, and I finished it on the 31st, so this could be kind of counted as my August wrap-up. I don't even know how many books I read in August because I didn't keep track, but I know I read this one, so we'll keep that. So one thing to keep in mind is that I am outside because the lighting is great, and I don't really have a designated place to film yet, so I wanted to try out different spaces in my house, and outside is the first one that I chose. So, for that, there are a couple of problems. One, my outside fan creaks because it's really hot out here and I need the fan on. So I'm sorry about that. If it annoys you, I'm really super sorry, but hopefully you can't hear it. Number two, I live in Vegas, so there will be jets flying by, and they're probably super annoying, but I'll try to make sure you can't hear them, but can't control the jets. Number three, there are dogs in my neighborhood, so if you hear a dog, I'm sorry. I have dogs too, so they might bark, I don't know, but hopefully that doesn't take away from the review for you. Let's get into it. I have all my notes over here. So, plot. The book is about Beatrice / Triss, she goes by Triss later on in the book, living in this dystopian world with different factions. When the kids in this book turn 16, they're supposed to pick a faction that they want to go into. They take this aptitude test that tells them what factions that they should go into, and then on faction choosing day, which I forgot, choosing ceremony I think it was called, they choose the faction that they want to spend the rest of their life in. So there are 5 factions that you can choose to be in, and number 1 is abdentation, okay, which is the selfless faction. Then you have amenity, which is the peaceful faction. Then you have candor, which is the honest faction. You have dauntless, which is the brave / fearless faction. Then you have erudite, which is the knowledge faction. So those are the different factions that they could choose from, and Triss comes from the abdentation faction. So she has grown up in a selfless faction, and she chooses her faction. Either she can choose the faction that she wants to stay in, that she could choose her faction that she grew up in, or she could choose a different faction. Alright, we're just going to go with that. I gave this book a 5 out of 5 on Goodreads, but it was more like a 4.5-ish for me, just because there are a few things that I didn't totally like and I didn't really understand, and most of it was pretty good. So that's why it's a 4.5 and a 5 out of 5 on Goodreads. Overall, I think that it's a great story and that you should probably check it out if you haven't already. They're making a movie out if you didn't know. Okay, that is that for the review portion of this video. If you haven't read the book, plan on reading the book, halfway through the book, don't care about the review, don't care about the book, don't want to discuss the book, whatever, then this next section is not for you. So I recommend that you come back after you read the book, or after you've seen the movie, or like whatever suits your needs. I don't know. Come back later when you've read the book, because I don't want to ruin anything. And this is probably going to have a lot of spoilers in it. Actually, I already know it's going to have a lot of spoilers in it. So I would not recommend you watch this if you've not read it. So, farewell to those who are leaving, and thank you for watching, and I hope you watch any other videos that I have put up, or anything like that, and please come back. The discussion part. This is where I'm going to talk about the book. I'm going to start off with all the things I didn't like about the book, and then go into the things that I did like, because I liked most of it. I'm going to focus on the things that I didn't like, because if you like the book, then you probably know what I'm talking about, and you like the same things that I like, or whatever, and the things I like are pretty straightforward, and I think it makes the book well-rounded, so I don't feel like I have to get into it in depth. The things that I disliked, I feel like I need to explain, because I don't want you guys to feel like like I'm totally crazy, because I just say all this stupid stuff and you don't understand where I'm coming from. So, keep in mind that I'm not a dystopian person. I don't like dystopian worlds very well, and it's not really my favorite type of reading. That being said, I'm branching out in my genres, and this was the very first one that I probably would have never picked up if I had never seen the trailer, because I'm not a dystopian fan. Just keep that in mind. Alright, I'm going to try to run through this really quickly. First, I want to talk about Triss. Now, the things I didn't like about Triss are really weird and they're hard to explain. Basically, I didn't like that she would think one thing and then say or her actions would do the very opposite of what she's thinking. It really threw me off, because I was totally involved in the story and I was totally on her way of thinking, and then all of a sudden she would do something completely different, and I'd be like, why did you just do that? And it really confused me. I don't know. That's just my opinion. I didn't really fully understand why she couldn't just be herself in front of her friends and stuff. I did understand it, but at the same time, I feel like that's a lot of the reason why she was the way she was. I don't know. Basically, I just feel like she was a little bit confusing. I also think that if the book was in third person, that it would have been a lot better, a lot easier to read. I would have understood it a lot more. I would have probably been a lot better, would have looked at Triss a lot differently, and I feel like that would have been the point of view that I would have put the book in. That's very picky of me to say, and I'm not saying that takes away anything from the story. Just for me, it was a little confusing to hear Triss say one thing and do the complete opposite. Next, let's talk about 4. I don't understand the hype around 4. He's not somebody that I would have chose for Triss. I just didn't get it. I just didn't understand. And a lot of things I heard about Divergent before I read it was about 4 and how awesome 4 was, and 4 this and 4 that, and I just didn't understand the hype. I still don't understand it. I think a lot of it was because I wasn't expecting 4 to be the way he was because of the trailer. He looks like such a BA in the trailer, and in the book he's not really that much of a BA. That, in my opinion, I don't know. He just seems so much different in the trailer, and I think that is a very good testament in saying that don't watch the trailer before you read the book, because it will give you misconceptions about the book. I also didn't like that Triss kept talking about how she didn't like Al, and how Al, not Owl, I sound like I was saying owl, how she didn't like Al, there we go, and that he cried at night and that he wasn't a strong person, and I remember her saying something like she would never like somebody like that, and then the first time we have one-on-one time with 4, he's scared of heights and he's shaking and freaking out. And I understand that 4 didn't cry and he didn't break down and he still did what he was supposed to do, but it just kind of threw me for a loop, because it was like, well, she doesn't want somebody who's not strong, but then she ends up with this guy. It kind of just confused me again. It was like one of those, she thought one thing and then her actions said something different. I understand that 4 was a strong person, stronger than most, but he was a little bit different around Triss, which I will get into in like 2 seconds. Let's talk about the world. Now, I've said this before in this video, I'm not a dystopian person, but this dystopian world was a little bit different, and I really appreciated it. Something I didn't like was the test. It wasn't that I didn't like it, I was very confused by it, because I felt like in the book, she talked it up, she made it seem like it was very important, it was like deciding factor in your life, and then all of a sudden, it's just a suggestion. You don't have to pick what's on the test. You can pick your faction now, or you can pick something different. And to me, it was like, what's the point of the test? Because I'm pretty sure that I read that some people picked something that wasn't on their test and wasn't their faction. So I'm like, what the heck? But I think it narrows it down. I could see where it's like this whole one choice can transform you kind of thing, where it's like you have all these choices. They're not trying to stick you in one category and make you go into those categories. And I appreciated that, but at the same time, the test I felt like was a little bit hyped up when it really wasn't that big of a deal. I also think that I was a little bit confused by it because she was divergent. I felt like because she was divergent, we had a different view on the test, so maybe that's why I didn't fully understand it, but to me it was just a little bit confusing. I get easily confused with these dystopian novels. I'm not a dystopian person. I want to talk about the different factions, and really quick, I loved the idea of the different factions. I think it's such an awesome, this is hard to explain. I love the idea of a utopian society because I love watching it be created and watching it be brought to life in these stories and then tore down, because the utopian society is just not practical. It's not going to work. Even in a novel, it just doesn't work. I forgot to mention that there's birds too. Not very many birds, but apparently there's one trying to mate in my backyard. Yeah, so I love the idea of finding a utopian society and then watching it fall. I also really liked the parallel, for me anyway, the parallel between a communist government and the faction. I feel like those two things run very similar to each other. They're very good ideas on paper, they probably would work in a perfect world, but it just does not work. And those things fascinate me. Like I said, I love watching it being built, and not necessarily in real life. I don't want to repeat World War II, but the idea of a utopian society just, I don't know, just interests me so much, and I love watching it fall. Those things just pique my interest. One other thing that I wanted to mention was, since I come from the more romance side than the I love dystopian, so I'm going to read this next dystopian novel side, is that I wish Veronica Roth would have talked a lot more about how love or things worked in this world. Because to me, it is just not practical to have this different factions and these different worlds and not have people from different factions falling in love with other people. And I understand that these people are separated into different factions, and then they're separated and they don't hang out ever, they don't talk to each other ever, they're just very separate in their little societies, and I know they don't hang out with each other, but it's just not practical to have everybody who's honest in one faction and everybody who's honest is going to love everybody else who's honest. It just doesn't work for me. And I feel like if she just added that little element of star-crossed lovers, it doesn't have to be anything important. It could just be like a side story, or it could just be a warning, or it could just been like her parents. I don't care. I just think it'd be way more interesting for someone coming from my side to have that background of the people from different factions, because opposites are going to attract, and it's inevitable. Even in a perfect society, I think that opposites are still going to attract. And I don't know. To me, it would have made the story more dimensional. It would have given a little bit more realism to it, but I understand that the romance side of this book is pretty much dormant. There's not a lot of romance, and that's just my opinion. I'm pretty sure people don't agree with me, but that's just where I'm coming from. And the things that I loved about this book. Now, I'm not going to list every single thing that I loved, but the major things that I loved were Triss's attitude. She was very independent. I probably said that before in this video. I think I did, but whatever. She's very independent, and I think it's very refreshing to have a female protagonist who's very independent. I don't see that a lot in my style of books. She didn't have to lean on Forrest, she didn't have to lean on her friends, she pretty much did it all on her own. She didn't have a family to lean on, and those things I really liked. I think those are great qualities to have in a main character. I also loved Forrest's sense of vulnerability around Triss only. I loved how he was very strong around everybody else and didn't let anybody else in, but around Triss, it was a no-brainer. He didn't even try to hold himself back. He was extremely open from the beginning, and I really liked that, because you don't see that a lot in male protagonists. It's like she flipped the characteristics in the characters, I think, because most men are very independent, very strong, very silent type in the books that I read, mind you. And the females are always a little bit vulnerable around the guy, and some of their characteristics are the same. I don't know, I think she flip-flopped them, which is really nice and refreshing, and I really liked it. And I absolutely loved Triss's mom. I think it was really awesome, and this goes to where I was saying about the love part of having that dimension, because I think it was cool that Veronica Roth put in this side of her mom loving her no matter what, because I think that you can never explain a mother's love. Like, you just can't explain it, but all moms love their children. Most moms love their children. I'm not going to say all moms because I've heard things around, so I'm not going to say all moms, but most moms love their children unconditionally, and I loved that Tris had that. In the beginning, we saw it in the very, very opening. In the beginning, her mom was just a little bit sweeter than what, as the story went on and developed, as what the other parents were towards their children, and what they should have been towards their children. And I love that, and I love going through the whole story and hearing her side of everything, and how her mom was just like her, and to me, it was just so endearing, and that was one of my favorite parts of the story, was Trista's mom. She was one of my favorite characters. Something that I didn't like, however, was that her mom died, and so did her dad, and that kind of pissed me off at the end. But, however, also I didn't like that Peter and Marcus lived. I wanted to kill them both on sight, but, again, what are you going to do? You need some sort of conflict in the story. You need some sort of conflict. Alright, so that's my review / discussion. I hope you really enjoyed it. I really like talking about books. I really like this. Thanks for watching. I hope you had a great day, and I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you next time. Peace out, Girl Scout.